Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time you are watching this video. So in this video, we're going to talk about factoring polynomials in the x squared plus bx plus c form. First thing we need to know is we need to talk about, let's look at an equation. It's easier if I just give you an example. So the very first equation we're going to look at is x squared plus 11x plus 18. And what we want to do is we want to factor this down into two of its binomials. Okay? So when I do this, I want to go ahead and write my equation. And then I set up two sets of parentheses. Well, in this case, we have two positive signs here. So that means that both of my binomials will be positive. So I'm just going to bring those signs down. We know how to make x squared. That's x times x. Okay, so that just leaves us with 18. So what we're going to do with 18 now is we need to break it down into its factoring pairs. So we can break 18 down into 1 times 18, 2 times 9, 3 times 6, and that's going to be all of its multiplication pairs. Now, we need to look at these three pairs, and we need to ask ourselves which one of these three pairs can make 11x when added together. So the only one that can make 11 through addition or subtraction is going to be the 2 and the 9. So it does not matter where you place them, okay? So what we're doing is we're doing the reverse FOIL of this. In order to check your answer, you can go ahead and FOIL this. X times x gives me x squared. X times 9 gives me 9x. 2 times x gives me 2x. And 2 times 9 gives me 18. When I combine my like terms, I get x squared plus 11x plus 18, which gives me my original trinomial. Okay, let's do another one. Let's look at x squared minus x minus 6. Okay, so I'm going to follow the same pattern. I'm going to go ahead and bring down my two sets of parentheses. Now we're going to look at our sign here. It is negative. There is only one way to make a negative number through multiplication, and that is with one negative and one positive. Okay, we know how to make x squared, so we have x times x. Now we got to look at our 6. Let's break it down. We have 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. We need to ask ourselves through subtraction, which one is going to give us a negative 1? The only one that can give us a negative 1 would be the 2 and the 3. Now you have to ask yourself, which one is positive and which one is going to be negative? Well, because I know that this is a negative sign, I know my larger value needs to be 3, and my smaller value needs to be positive 2. So x minus 3, x plus 2. I can check my work by doing FOIL again. X times x gives me x squared. X times 2 gives me positive 2x. Negative 3 times x gives me negative 3x. And negative 3 times positive 2 gives me negative 6. When I combine my like terms, I get x squared minus x minus 6, which is my original trinomial. Let's do one more. Let's look at x squared minus 4x plus 3. Why don't you pause the video at this point and see how you do on your own? I'm going to go forward. So I start with my two parentheses. This time I have a negative here and a positive here. Well, there's only two ways to get positive through multiplication. That's positive and positive, or negative and negative. Well, in this case, because my center term is negative, I know I have to use the negative negative version of it. we can make x squared by x times x. And there's only one factoring pair for to get 3, and so this has to be 1 and 3. So this in the factored form is x minus 1, x plus 3. Let's do one more. How about w squared plus 6w minus 16? So go ahead and pause the video now and see how you do. I'm going to go forward and finish with this one. Again, I'm going to start with my 2 sets of parentheses. Okay, this sign is negative. I know that there's only one way to make negative through multiplication, and I know that I'm going to have to make that positive and negative. We make w squared by w times w. And now I have 16, so let's find all the multiplication pairs of 16. I have 1 times 16, 2 times 8, and then 4 times 4. Okay, I need them to add up or subtract to be 6. The only set of pairs can be 2 and 8. I know that my 6w is positive, which means that 8 has to be the positive, and 2 has to be the negative. And if I want to check my work, I can go ahead and FOIL it. And when I FOIL, I get w squared minus 2w plus 8w minus 16. If I combine these guys, I get w squared plus 6w minus 16, and that gives me my original trinomial. Okay? So let's use this in solving problems. So our very first example in solving, so this one, we want to solve the equation, or some books or teachers might say find the roots. Depends on how you want, but it's all going to be the same thing. So I want to find the roots or solve m squared plus m minus 20 equals 0. If you'll notice a difference between this example and the previous 4 examples, we have added the equal 0. That's how I know that we can solve this, or we have to solve this. So before I can solve this, I want to go ahead and I want to break it down into its 2 binomials. So we know how we're going to make m and m. We have a negative here, which means that we have 1 positive, 1 negative binomial. And now let's find the factors of 20. We have 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 4 times 5, and that's all of them. We now look at which one of these is going to be able to make 1m in the center term. And so that's going to be this one. We know that this is positive, so 5 must be positive and 4 must be negative. So now we have the binomials. So now we solve it. M plus 5 equals 0 and n minus 4 equals 0. Again, we've learned this in a previous video. So m equals negative 5 and add 4 to both sides. N equals 4. So we have both of the equations. Let's look at another example where we're going to find the roots. So here's example number 2. We are going to look at x squared plus 3x equals 18. This problem looks a little different than the one above. It's not equal to 0, but we can get it to equal 0 by just moving our 18 over here. Excuse me. But in algebra, we can't just move a number. We have to do its inverse. So we're going to subtract 18 from both sides. So we now have x squared plus 3x minus 18 equals 0. And now we can go ahead and solve for the roots or find the roots for this one. Again, I'll start with my 2 parentheses, and that's going to equal 0. We have x and x. Our third term is negative, so we know that it has to be positive negative. 18 is broken down into 1 times 18, 2 times 9, 3 times 6. Our center term has to be 3x, a positive 3x, so that means that 6 has to be positive and our 3 has to be negative. Now we're ready to solve this. So we have x plus 6 equals 0 and x minus 3 equals 0. So subtract 6 from both sides. And so x is equal to a negative 6. And we add 3 to both sides. So x equals 3. So the two roots for that equation will be that. Okay? Let's look at one more problem where we have to solve. So this is going to be our example number 3. So with this one, it's going to look a little weird. So this time we have s times s plus 1. Let's get a line here to separate this. Equals 72. Okay, this doesn't even look like any of the problems what we did before, but we can make it look like that by doing the distributive property first. So let's distribute that s. So we get s squared plus s equals 72. And this now looks like the problems that we did just now in the two problems above. I'm going to subtract 72 from both sides. So I get s squared plus s minus 72 equals 0. And then we're going to go ahead and factor this and then solve it. S and s. Again, we have a negative here, so we know we have a positive and a negative. So I can start breaking this down, and hopefully you'll get to a point where you know that your multiplication tables pretty well, and you won't have to do this step over here, but I'm going to do it for you. 1 times 72, 2 times 36, 3 times 24, 4 times 4 won't divide into it, 5 doesn't, 6 times 12, 7, nope, 8 times 9, and that's going to be all of them. And so I need to look at these 5 sets, and I need one of them when added or subtracted will equal 1s, and the only one it will be 9 and 8. Because my s is positive, 9 has to be positive, and 8 has to be negative. So we can now go ahead and solve this. S plus 9 equals 0, and s minus 8 equals 0. Subtract 9 from both sides, and so s equals negative 9, and we're going to add 8 to both sides. S equals 8. Okay? Now, one last thing we're going to talk about is functions. If you see a problem where it says f of x or g of x is equal to x squared plus 11x plus 18, all they want you to do with this is, instead of putting f of x here, just replace it with 0. So 0 equals x squared plus 11x plus 18, and then you'll go through the steps of solving this again. I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's my pleasure to help you, and I hope you have a great day. Take care.